All right. Looks like she's rolling. All
Okay.
right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Graceway Radio. Today, I'm super excited to introduce our guest for today. His name is Nathan Sutherland. He is the author of Gospel Tech. Gospel Tech is also the name of his ministry, so don't get the two confused. It's actually Gospel Centered Tech is his publication. We met 2 years ago, I believe now, over at a conference down in Kirkland, Washington, and I was really drawn to Nathan, his ministry, what the Lord gave him, and I feel very honored today that Nathan has given us the opportunity to talk with him about what the Lord has put in his lap and what the Lord has given him. So, Nathan, if you could just start from the beginning and just kind of give our listeners a rough overview of who Nathan Sutherland is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Frank, thank you for having me on. I love what Graceway Radio is doing and am excited to be on this conversation. I guess from the beginning, let me take you back to, because there's a lot to be said, but I was a middle school teacher.
I know. I know.
You've heard so many of my words over the years.
I know.
I was a middle school teacher for a decade here in Washington State, and I absolutely love that age group. I taught 8th grade language arts, and I love that age group because they're old enough to have a sense of humor, to have their own goals and their own thoughts, and young enough to still engage with adults, to still be honest about their life, their feelings, and their struggles. And so you get a lot of snarky, emotional individuals in the same room, and you're bound to have a good time. You will not be bored while teaching 8th grade, and I do loathe boredom. So I was teaching for a decade, realized I had a passion, yes, in the classroom to see kids learn to read, learn to express themselves and understand others well, but really to find their full purpose in Christ. And so in 2016, I started a nonprofit and began speaking, and thought that was going to be the direction everything went. And in 2019, got to do my first little speaking tour. I did 5 talks over the course of a day, drove over to Eastern Washington, and it was a pretty big deal as someone who was trying to transition from the classroom teaching to full-time professional speaking. And I finished my 5th talk and was like, we can't do that for the rest of my life. One thing, teach 180 days, have the gospel kind of come out through your actions and relationships and your hope for these kids. And it's another thing to parachute in for a 50-minute assembly and then just walk away and be like, oh, I think I just dropped all of the Old Testament on them. And it was like, you want to live a good life? Here's the right way to do it. And forget to tell them they have no strength with which to do those right things. And in conviction, went back to my board. We prayed about it, and Gospel Tech was born out of this idea that we want to help families. So we aim at parents because that's our best way to equip the most young people, parents, mentors, teachers, pastors. How do we equip them to raise healthy youth in a tech world, to raise kids who love God and from their love of God use tech rather than flipping that and try to use tech or use God and then love tech and try to get their own kingdom to come and their own will to be done. And so that has been a journey. We started 2019 with Gospel Tech. It's an extension of Flint and Iron, the other nonprofits. So still one organization with a pair of focuses. I still speak in public organizations, public schools, and Gospel Tech is aimed at Christian schools, churches, and organizations. And then 2020 happened. And so I had a bit of an identity crisis myself. I was really excited about it. And I was like, absolutely, this will make sense because I'm still working with young people and for young people. And then I was working in my garage with no heater, no insulation, just staring at my lawnmower and smelling, gas fumes and questioning a lot of what God, did I hear this wrong, Lord? Why am I in this position? I realized I got a lot of identity from teaching, and I got a lot of identity from the tangible conversations with young people actively in it. And if you want something that's the opposite of that, it would be recording a podcast by yourself in your garage, like a camera that doesn't blink or laugh, and never really knowing the impact of what you're doing. So you're purely praying and producing because of the conviction the Lord's given you. And that can be a really dark season. And you pray, Lord, is it either just hard because it's hard? Is it hard because I'm doing the wrong thing? Or is it I'm doing the right thing, but in the wrong way? How do I know if this difficulty is just where you've put me? Or if it's like, hey, wake up, Nathan, you're doing it all wrong. And so we prayed into that a lot. My wife and I prayed into that a lot. Again, the process of God peeling back layers and taking away idols that you used to think were missional. Like, that's the really hard part, is like, no, like education is that's my mission field. That's not my identity. Obviously I'm here because I'm selfless. Who would do this on purpose? And it turns out I was super selfish in parts of that. And the Lord graciously peeled those away and continues to. By the way, you can be selfish about professional speaking too. But in my current life, it was people, it was affirmation, and it was constant busyness. And I got the opposite of that for 18 months until 2022 came around and people had watched their children use screens in their own homes for the last 2 years. And people started showing up and be like, hey, what do you have to talk about technology? And I was like, well, actually, I have resources. It kind of was like I was Rocky Balboa in the refrigerator, the meat locker, and just punching sides of beef. It was my own little kung fu montage.
I was going to say Jonah in the belly of the whale, but that works too.
Yeah. I was less begrudging of God by the end of this. I mean, Jonah comes through and like he preaches like the worst sermon of all time, forgets the other half of like repent, and then sits and waits for them to get flamed, right? And is super mad about it not happening. By this point, I was pretty pumped to be able to do the work I was called to do, and actually elated to watch it work, because that was the wild part. Was we had been doing this in effective isolation, again, praying and creating content and like doing what we felt convicted to do. But like, this is not a model for product production. Like, you should never just make a product that you feel convicted to make, but no one's asked for. Right. And at the beginning, like, yeah, we got lots of pushback. One of the biggest top 5 districts in my state, the first real meeting I ever got in a public school, went 2.5 hours, and I was told, you sound very 2007, you need to get with the times. And that was crushing. It was a really bummer. And I was like, man, like maybe I'm just not, like maybe I am just a little backwards and it's just not really my cup of tea. And, tech is fine and I just am making too much of it. And by 2022, I was like, no, I've read the research. I'm aware of myself and people. I do know my own weaknesses, but this is real. And so began doing that conversation. Then 2023, a book called The Anxious Generation came out, which used research. Like, one of the big pushbacks is none of this is new. And that's true. All of us knew this research. None of us were able to put it as cohesively as Jonathan Haidt does in that book. And it is a blessing that book came out, because my conversations, I'll do a 90-minute workshop and I was spending 50 minutes on like, I promise it's not a tinfoil hat. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is all actually happening, to the point where like, I don't even have to say these words. People know it. They've seen it. They've connected the dots. And now they just want the practical and hope-focused resources that'll let them do what they really want to do, which is parent kids well and use all the best tech well. And that is where the ministry is now. I run workshops, we create content, and the resources are intended to equip adults to help young people use the best tech well, to use all the tech that makes them look more like Jesus. And it is still very humbling, but we're no longer in the season of like, Lord, why have you called us to this desert?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how the Lord used that whole lockdown thing to really be the genesis of your people having the revelation that what you have is valuable to them. When we were kids and our parents bought us a baseball, they knew the ramifications of buying us a baseball.
Yeah.
And even us, as roughly being the same age, we grew up at the genesis of Atari and Nintendo and these newfangled contraptions that you could play from the comfort of your own home rather than having to go spend all of your allowance down at the arcade. And the ramifications, though new and exciting, were completely unknown. And what a divine intervention, as it were, to be able for parents to see in real time what actually happens when their kids are using this screen time. It's not, we come home from work and our children use screens some of the time, but when it's 24 hours a day, month after month, you really get to see how, for lack of a better word, addicting
Yeah.
tech is. And when something like that is uncovered, the feeling of helplessness as a parent is inevitable.
Yeah.
And I really, for me personally, that's a large part of what drew me towards you when we first met. Was I am a product of that generation,
Yeah.
and having my own personal struggles and not having a Nathan in my life to be able to tell my parents what I should or shouldn't be doing, tell my parents how to have healthy conversations, or their ignorance of technology was far greater than my ability to manipulate was.
Yeah.
It took me very little effort to manipulate my parents into convincing them that my use of technology was something wholesome and good and couldn't possibly go wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, and as parents, we want to believe those things. And it is interesting you put it that way, because when I go and speak and then talk to parents about what they're doing, the most locked down parents in terms of what technology they'll allow in their home are the upper 20s parents to low 30s probably. So like the 20, I don't know, 8-year-old to 32, 35. 35 is probably the upper end. 32 to maybe down to 26. And those are the kids who were, given iPads and given smartphones and given free reign, and now they have their own kids and they're like, absolutely not. We're going to be writing on a lot of paper. You're going to be inviting a lot of friends over because we are not doing digital playtime, and maybe to a fault, but it is that swing of the pendulum where we were on the front end, and it took us years and years and years to figure out some of the negatives that are possible and then some of the negatives that are designed. And by that, I mean, you get something like social media that's designed for retention and is intended to build comparison, because that draws you back to continue to see both how you stack up against others, but also the people that are doing it great, because you want to mimic them and because you like their life and you'd like to spend more time in it. So social media, yes, it can just be compulsive behaviorally because we're human, but it's also designed to do that. And that is very different compared to like a Microsoft Word, which sure, you could misuse Microsoft Word, but it's not going to be by design. There's no behavioral loops built into that where you're getting positive feedback or points, rewards, reminders, any of that stuff. So
yeah, exactly. Like you had indicated in your book, Microsoft Word is never going to send you a notification to for, hey, it's been a week since you've written a haiku. Would you like to, sit down and be creative for 5 minutes?
Right. Yes.
It's not going to do that. So, Nathan, I'd like to start off by just asking a few more personalized questions.
Okay.
So you and Anna have been married for how long now?
Coming up on 20 years this July.
20 years. And you got 3 little ones?
We do.
So being a father and also being a husband, how has your busy life in your own family's tech struggles inspired you to start gospel-centered tech and write this book?
Yeah, raising 3 humans in a tech world is plenty of motivation. I like to remind everyone when I go and speak live that I'm not there because I'm doing this perfectly. Expecting my children to use tech perfectly would be like expecting your pediatrician's kids to never get sick. So I have a lot of life experience through middle school and through youth work. I have a lot of research that I've built on, and then I have been able to do this hands-on work since 2019 on the gospel side. So that's a pretty good head start. I know a lot of right answers, but my goodness, my kids are 11, 9, and 6. Owen, Henry, Hadley. And yeah, they put me through the ringer. It's a constant conversation of, Dad, when do I get a smartphone? What video games can we play? Can we do this thing? I want to go do that thing. And so it bakes in some of that humility to the right answers. So there are correct answers, right? Like, don't let your kids play video games that go against the truths of the Bible. Okay. And brass tacks, all their friends are doing it. What's that look like? How do you apply that beyond just getting your game choice right? How do you actually make this a heart conversation of, this is a bad gift, son, which is a conversation I have a lot, right? Luke 11, we're like, hey, you asked me for an egg. You came to me as a son who knows his dad likes to give him good gifts. And you said, Dad, I want this good gift. And my job as a parent is to point out, that's not an egg. That's a scorpion. That thing's going to hurt you, and it's going to hurt other people around you. So no, I'm not mad at you. It's not because I don't understand it. It's not kids these days, get off my lawn. That's a bad gift. So how about this other thing? And sometimes the other thing has the internet and is a digital device. And sometimes, most of the time, it's not. And so the kids are very motivating because as a parent, man, it's so different when they're your kid. And like, I loved my middle schoolers, but not like I love my own children. In fact, I think I'd be a much better teacher now that I have my own kids.
You're not just saying that because they're in the room. I just want our audience.
Yeah. They're just right here. I'm like, hey, kids. No, they're not. They're actually at school right now, having other people love them. My wife and Anna and I tried to homeschool one year during COVID, and we quickly realized, like, nope, we need other loving adults. And we were both teachers. She was a high school teacher. I was middle school. And we're both like, no, we need other people to lovingly speak into these lives. And that's not, by the way, a stipulation for everyone, but like our family, we very quickly realized this. And I think that's a great transition to when we're talking about this technology piece. They motivate us to both have the conversation well. They remind us of the humility we need to have when having this conversation, and the whole focus of it, which isn't fix our kids and make sure they never make mistakes with tech. The motivation is introduce our kids to Jesus, the savior of our souls, who then makes us new creations. I was just reading through Ephesians, and in Ephesians 2 and in Ephesians 4, we're reminded that we died to our old way of life. We put off the old self and we put on the new self, and that our walk of faith is one of action. Like, our faith is a verb. It's a thing we do. So yes, our kids trust Jesus. So now what's it look like to do the faith walk of putting on the new self? And in the area of technology, there's always a chance to go, hey, do we want to do this because it makes us feel good, or because this actually brings good fruit? And that's a regular recurring conversation. Anna and I process the stress of this job through that lens of, is this helping us love our kids well? And is this helping us equip others to love their kids well? There's a upper cap on how many trips I can do and how many talks I can give. And that is us just trusting the Lord that, okay, Lord, you're going to use this. You're going to use the digital means we can use. So we have a podcast and we do conversations like this to reach more families. We're making some more resources, all with the focus on how do we equip more people to do this work well? Because we found that actually the conversation itself, how do you raise up kids who love God and use tech, isn't very complicated. But that doesn't make it easy. So it's a fairly simple conversation. You need to know the kinds of tech. You need to assess if it's healthy. You need to build some hedges and some habits for healthy life. Like, that's it. And it's kind of that on loop. But my goodness, if getting that information, so that's where the book came from, is like, people would come to a talk and go, this was great, but my sister couldn't make it, or my aunt needs to hear this, or my cousin over in Florida needs to hear it. So we made the book as like concise as possible. And then Anna wrote The Graceful Disconnect as like a devotional aimed just for moms, of like, all right, so you may or may not be a tech person, but you love your kids and you love Jesus. Like, how do you get your eyes off of all the scary stuff with tech and get them back on the Lord, and like live and parent from the hope that Christ gives you, not just from the fear of what tech might do?
Sure. Yeah. The fine balance between hope and fear. And, that brings up, you're in a unique position because of your ministry, you are forced to continue to stay ahead of the curve on new technology, new ways of marketing, new ways of targeting, as far as what the tech companies come out with on any given day or month of new ways to engage, new ways to get new customers, new ways to keep new customers, new ways to get you to spend money, new ways to take up your time.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, at least here in our church, there seems to be this threshold where they get to a certain age and they just don't want to learn anymore.
Yeah.
If it
Yes.
doesn't, if it's not as simple as a turning on a radio dial, they don't they don't want to learn about the latest and greatest or how to use a phone. My goodness, I could open my own business just here in my small town and say, "Hey, if you're over 50 and don't know how to use your phone, pay me $10 and I'll show you how to use it." I'd be a millionaire in like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, it's an
I do
interesting
know.
position for you to be in because I think inevitably your children are going to turn 18, 20, 21, whatever the age might be, and move out of your house.
Yeah.
And that leaves Nathan with no one to micromanage or be a father to,
Yeah.
and
Where you want to see it.
so, you know, i- you're in that interesting position where you can't stop learning about technology. And because just like you mentioned before about someone calling you out for being a 2007 stale cracker, right? You can't be a stale cracker at a speaking event at any given time because there's always something new and something that's not necessarily known to everybody, but they need to know so that they can have the tools and awareness of at least what to look for to be able to have that conversation. And I love that you use that word conversation all the time in your um speaking, because fundamentally that's, I feel, where your biggest push to parents is don't stop the line of communication. Don't stop the interaction between you and your children, and don't make it a villain a villainous type of conversation or a punishment based conversation, but honesty. You're a very big proponent about kids having the safety net of coming to their parents and being able to be honest without fear of retribution, about my goodness, the P word, that's a big scary thing for a lot of people. And to be able to have that conversation with your children is very, very important. And you laid it out so succinctly in your book. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah. I can. So do I get to say the word on this podcast? Will that
Yeah, I was just being pedantic.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, there's some people who are like, no, that's going to get filtered. So pornography is a big conversation. I'm actually here in like a week and a half going to be talking at a church, and they're bringing in community members, and it's smartphones, video games, and pornography. That can be traumatic for children if they've never heard that word, but it's so important to address the subject. And what I'll say is this: as loving parents, we are going to address the subject very early by teaching our children about their own bodies that are good, that are designed by God, and that are their bodies, so that we can teach them like personal boundaries of like good and bad touches. The I Said No is a great book, and Good Picture, Bad Picture, one teaching the physical boundaries and one teaching the digital boundaries of there are pictures of bodies made by God, but they're being displayed in unloving and incorrect ways, of ways that God says are bad. So when you see them, that doesn't make you bad. That is a bad interaction that can be bad for your heart. And I want you to bring that to me. And I want to talk that with you. And we're going to put up hedges. And if that happens, you can always tell me and you'll never be in trouble. And the reason for that is, by the way, that doesn't mean you're not going to change things. You can have a kid not be in trouble and say, this was unsafe, so we're going to change it. We're moving the fence further back from the cliff. The reason that's so important is 75% of teenagers have seen pornography. 58% of them saw it on accident. And so by not talking about pornography, we are doing a disservice to our children. A lot of parents can be concerned. It's very concerning as a loving adult, be like, man, I'm going to bring it up. And then they're going to be curious and they're going to go look for it. And while that can happen, what is happening more consistently is young people have no idea what's going on, and then they're just exposed to this. They don't have the words now. They don't have the emotional intelligence, and they don't, like, it could be a mix of excitement, shame, fear. Like there's a whole range of emotions. They might just general curiosity because they have no context for what they just witnessed.
Sure.
And that is where we get into trouble, because the internet with this content is not what we grew up with in the 90s. It isn't a static image that is mailed out once a week or once a month that you have to sneak and find, and it's the same image. I mean, we are talking the UK government this last year began on in Parliament to pass a rule basically banning a large portion of what is now typical pornography. And their baseline for that is if it's not legal in real life, it shouldn't be legal for recreational consumption. So theirs isn't a moral stance against pornography writ large. They're saying the content online that is becoming normal is so bad it would literally be illegal in real life. So there's no way to create this content and legally. And then they go, but even if it was digital, so no people were involved, they said what we're seeing is that it doesn't reflect public sentiment, which this has been the big argument around pornography forever. It's like, oh, well, it's just a reflection of society, and it's good they can get their jollies online because then they're not going to hurt other people. What the UK government found, like, oh no, it's actually pivoting preference. So pornography doesn't reflect societal norms, it adjusts them. So because these would be illegal in real life activities are happening online, we're seeing an uptick in the same behaviors in real life. And so that's super important for us to know as loving parents, because again, 58% of the kids that are exposed to that didn't mean to see it. And by the way, they're not going to websites dedicated to this. 80% of kids that are exposed are not going to pornography specific websites. They're on social media.
Yep.
That's where
it could be an album cover on Spotify.
It literally could be an album
could be
cover.
Just an ad on the side of the window.
Yep.
And,
it could be on a bus, in a classroom,
yes.
at a sporting event, in a dugout at a baseball game, yeah. In the backseat of your car because you handed them the phone to look up a song and their buddy grabbed it and typed in 3 letters and boom, you've got porn. So that's important for us to note because there is an amount of loving fear that comes in, right? Like the same way you're not going to let your kid play Frogger on the freeway because you have a fear of the danger to them, not because you fear all cars, but because you fear those cars for that child. And I would say the internet, unfettered internet, is just Frogger. It's not a matter of if you're going to get hurt, it's when. And the question is, if we're letting our children go with no safety or regulation, how are we going to know when they actually got hurt? So
absolutely.
Being present on that, starting early, good picture, bad picture, and I said no are a great spot to start young. You don't have to scar your child's mind or share your whole testimony in relation to your choices with sexual integrity, but you can love your child enough to begin and get that ball rolling, and then it ramps up to where you're using the words and having real conversations as your kids get older.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I think brass tacks, us being Christians, we have that extra layer where we understand that there's spiritual forces involved.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that conversation, the only person your child is speaking to is that demonic force that wants them to keep on going, and I just found that very near and dear to my heart because like I said, I was grown up in the age where, my parents had no clue that that was even an option on the internet. But right. I told my parents that the only way I could study is with my door shut. It's a real thing. And, for as distasteful and unpleasant as it is, I think it's so, so important for the health of a family, for the health of young minds. I was listening to, I believe it was Paul Washer probably, but he was talking about how 100, 200 years ago, boys didn't hear anything about sex until they were maybe 18.
Sure.
And then they would get married at 20, 21, maybe even 19, who knows? But now we're teaching kids about sex at 8, 9, or they stumble across it, like you said, 8, 9, 10 years old, and then they don't get married until they're 35. So they have this 20-year window of depravity that they have to constantly battle with if they don't understand the ramifications and the spiritual implications and the spiritual effects of both them for their own mental health and the health of their relationships and their family structure and stuff like that. So, I want to just thank you for not being shy or, I want to thank you for talking about those things to people because no one wants to talk about it, but everybody should be talking about it, especially those who have children.
Yeah, and it is. I love that point by Washer, and I would push back on it just a little bit in that it isn't that parents are bringing it up, because there are individuals that say, "Hey, you're bringing up this conversation, and that's what's causing our children to sin," and I would push back on that and say that we don't have any evidence that that's true. What we are seeing is that young people in a culture where sex is celebrated from how you sell jeans to how you sell chips, they get the idea very quickly that there are attractive people out there, and I would like to see more of said attractive people. And what we are doing is this. So this is Ephesians 4, that we put off our old self, which belongs to our former way of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. That idea of deceitful desires, we have to train our children that, like, your brain and your body may tell you that if I had sex, or if I had a body that was attractive to others, or if I had unlimited access to the internet, or if I could access this content on my terms and my way, then I'd be okay. Those are deceitful desires. They don't come to fruition. They don't bear good fruit. You will not meet someone who has used enough pornography that they're like, whew, now I'm finally satisfied. In fact, what we see is, like Dr. Anna Lembke in her book, Dopamine Nation, they use enough pornography and their sexual desires just completely pivot. It actually becomes pornography is the only thing that can fulfill them. It's not that they're now more satisfied, it's that they're more isolated. And that is the conversation we're trying to get in front of our kids. So it's not avoid talking about sex so that they have a smaller window. It's talk about God's promise with sex. Actually, Mama Bear Apologetics, her book on sexuality, Hillary and Amy, I forget their last names right now, does an awesome job of setting that conversation up in really loving, intentional ways that is extremely biblical. And that does a beautiful job of acknowledging sex, identity, sexuality, God's plan for men and for women and for marriage, and the idea that singleness is still a stage that we're all called to. And some of us for longer periods of time, some of us, that is the call God's put on us. And Jesus says, that's your better option. If the Lord puts that in front of you and convicts you of it, like, follow it. So we need to get away from, I don't know what you were raised with, but I was very much raised with, like, stay pure because then sex will be awesome. And like, the subtext to that is, and your wife is there to meet your needs sexually. And like, that's not actually the way the Bible works. That's not the goal of sex. The goal of sex is to show us God's union with his church, and not to get that twisted, but recognize that, like, the church is the bride of Christ, and that when revelation comes and the bridegroom arrives and takes his wife to himself, there is this idea of union of two becoming one flesh that is it's a little bit of an echo of what eternity is supposed to be. It's the only time in human existence that we have this concept of two becoming one. There is no other metaphor we can use for this. When God talks about being a triune God and has three persons, we don't know what that means. Like, we get it. We understand that that is a paradox that is true. But, like, there's no other explanation in human existence other than a man and a wife through marriage. And that is really important for us to wrestle with, that there's a greater truth. And the reason I say that's a metaphor is marriage doesn't exist in heaven. You're not going to be married to your spouse. We're all going to stand alone before the throne, and before
no male, no female.
There's no male and female. There's children of God. We are not given in marriage. We'll be like the angels, we're told. But unfortunately, we don't know a lot about the angels, so we don't know exactly what that means. But Jesus was very clear that a woman who was married to 7 different men, because of this idea of each brother has to try to do the right thing and give her children, like, that woman isn't married to any of them. And we as a church are married to Christ. And that is the metaphor we're trying to hold. So again, 2 books, Mama Bear Apologetics, specifically their book on sex and sexuality. And then the other one that I already forgot. Wow, it'll come back to me. But I said it earlier. I was just trying to recap them both. That specific book is, wow, I totally forgot what the other book was that I was going to say. Anyway, Anna Lembke's book, Dopamine Nation, is another good one when it talks about how pornography specifically, and then technology more generally, affects the brain. And so those are important conversations for us to dive into. Yes, kids are getting it for longer periods of their life and are going later in life without getting married. But I think in the 90s, we were told that marriage would fix it because spouses and such. And that's not God's call for marriage. It's a much bigger picture than that.
Indeed, indeed. And, you coming from a middle school background, that's
Yeah.
the age of, I'm no longer a child, I'm an adult now,
It is.
relatively so. And, a lot of the middle school kids, they will get away with everything that they can get away with. So,
Yep.
in that vein, what's one moment from your teaching days that still shapes how you approach parenting and technology today?
Oh man. One moment from teaching that affects okay. I mean, the big picture one would be the fact that by 8th grade they have a full-on will of their own. And I think junior hires and middle schoolers love to be talked to like they are adults and loved like they are children. And there is that odd dichotomy. And so and this goes all the way through high school. You do need to speak to them like they have a will of their own and that they are made in the image of their creator, and that by the time your kid gets to middle school, they need to understand that, like, yes, you're their parent, but like you're quickly pivoting kind of into their coach, if you will. And you're letting them get more of that independence and a little more of that risk, a little more of that responsibility. And that's right. That is the goal. The goal is not to raise a safe kid. It's to raise a healthy adult. And how do we do that? We begin to let them fail. And our culture is not built for that. We are like, you have to get all the best grades so that you can get into all the best schools, so you can get all the best job opportunities. And they basically have never learned to do any of like the important stuff. Like
you and I think we talked a while back, and I think we actually brought this up in a roundabout kind of way, where I think you and I were of the last generation where during recess, or, they had those, physical education, run a mile things.
Yeah.
And there was first place, second place, and third place. And then the rest were just people that didn't get first, second, and third place.
Sure.
And we were the last generation of children that we didn't receive participation badges. We got first place, second place, third place, or you just lost.
Yeah.
And you found out real quick what you were good at and what you were not good at. And that was healthy as a child, to understand that it's okay that I'm never going to be as fast as Brent. Brent will always run faster than me.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Is Brent a real person? Do you remember this?
I'm better at him at Foursquare.
Okay.
But to your point of risk, our society, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, that our society has morphed into this complete risk aversion, where parents are fearful to even allow to watch their children do something that's dangerous carefully.
Yeah.
And that's really the only way they learn, is by failing and then doing it again. And I think that is very relevant to your ministry. And I'm sure you hear this a lot, as far as parents saying, well, how can I just prevent my child from failing ever? Let's lock them in a Faraday cage where they have no Wi-Fi, they have no, radio signals whatsoever coming into the room. And that way they'll never fail.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, that is not metaphorical. There are absolutely parents building those to stop just any technological access within their home. And what I would say to that is not, throw your child. I would say, let's say it this way: your child does not need more digital risk in order to be a healthier adult. Your child needs more analog risk. And actually, Jonathan Haidt, in his book Anxious Generation, does a great job of walking out why those two are different. But the short version is, analog risk is part of how your body is designed to develop a healthy basis for living. It's relational stress helps you understand how to handle relationships, and physical stress helps your body understand how to handle physical challenge. And mental stress, both the learning and the basic anxieties that go with things like unknowns and trying new stuff and trying to learn and doing bad at it. Those are how your body adapts and builds a baseline for this is a healthy amount of risk and this is unhealthy, which is why we saw young people after COVID and 2 years of never being around people start wearing a lot of hoodies and AirPods, because we would see kids go into public spaces and their bodies did not have a baseline for this isn't a safe group that I'm around right now. Yeah, there's a lot of people. Yeah, it's really noisy, but I'm safe. So what do they start doing? They started flipping hoods up because it gives them a sense of closeness. And they put in AirPods because they can control their vibe, right? They can control the mood that they're in this moment. And in those situations, now I'm okay. But those are coping mechanisms. They're a way to get in the water, right? They're floaties when you're learning to swim. You're not intended to wear them forever. Like, we need you to have some independence in this. And so digital risk is not the same thing. It can be so traumatic, and it builds on what your baseline was for real life. So you need to develop the real life relationships and the real life responsibilities and risk and opportunities. And then from that, start taking some digital forays to learn what does work with you. There are some kids that will have greater amounts of digital dependence, and people say, okay, but my kid's going to be 18 and then they're going to go off on their own. And that's true. What we're not seeing is kids turn 18, go to college, go to a job, move out, have loving relationships with their parents previously, have technology that is healthy for them and that they've asked for. And then they turn 18, move out, find an iPhone laying around, go on a bender, and wake up with the Apple logo tattooed on their lower back. What we are seeing is young people with self-destructive habits that are being allowed to continue destroying themselves and those around them in the name of, but they're going to be adult one day. And the kids will say that. That's one of their favorite, like, I'm going to do this anyway when I turn 18. Be like, okay, but that's on your time. That's between the U.S. government and God at that point, right? Like, and you. So that's one side of it. Or we're seeing young people who are following the rules, and they are respectful, and they are responsible, and they are doing the right things in the right way. And then they've asked for an opportunity. Like my kid coming to me and asking for a smartphone or that video game or that other device that everybody has. And they're getting shut down, not because it's unsafe or unloving, but simply because the parents are fearful and they want to manage this child, like you said, micromanage. And you will get backlash at that point. Those kids who are doing the right thing, asking for a loving gift, and you have the opportunity now to say, hey, you've been faithful in little things in real life. You're faithful with our family. You're faithful with your friends. You're faithful with your emotions, your sleep, your enjoyment, your time. You do well in these. You're not perfect, but you do well, and I can see growth, and I can point to where you're using it well. And you're asking me for an opportunity, and maybe you're asking me for an unfettered smartphone. No. But what about this other thing? Maybe you can use the app on my device. Maybe we can get you a lockdown version. Maybe we can get you a dumb phone, like a Bark device, where it's just one app at a time. But the goal isn't have a kid who's never seen tech and somehow magically this will work well. The goal is help that child turn 18 and realize his or her limits. So like on my device we're using right now, I have Covenant Eyes on my laptop. I have no social media on my phone and no app store because I am 42. I know my limits and I love making good choices. So I've invited people into my life to help me with my limits. I no longer play video games. It's a bigger part of my story, but like I played video games until my late 20s. And then I realized I was using them to be okay. So I don't get video games anymore. Not because video games are bad, but because I am mentally weak and video games eat me alive. And I was choosing them over my wife, my job, like my ministry. It was a really unhealthy spot to be. So I don't use them anymore. I literally cut them off, gouge them out, like Jesus says in Matthew 5:28-30. That's what we want for our kids. By the time they're 18, they know their limits. They know what they have to cut off from faith. Because when you give up something that's destroying your life, you lose nothing. Like you only get the health that comes because you're faithfully trusting the Lord to be better than whatever your favorite distraction is in my case. Right. And that is what we want for our children is, yes, raise them up in analog world so they can know how to handle their real world emotions, real world friendship, real world responsibilities, and extend them digital responsibilities as they're healthy and allowed. And I want to come back to that in just a moment. I'll talk very tangibly about what we do with our kids. And then withhold ones that have proven to be unhealthy. I had a young man in West Virginia be like, my parents are mean. They don't give me social media. They will never give me a smartphone. I talked to his parents after the workshop. And they're like, oh, no, we gave him a smartphone last year. He committed a felony. And we're like, oh, so you have a 15-year-old who, when he was 14, committed a felony with a smartphone. But his narrative to himself and anyone who will listen is, my parents are mean. They won't listen to me. He hasn't said sorry. He's clearly not repentant. And when his mom said, you can use those apps you want to use, but you have to do it on my phone where there's accountability and I can control the device. He said, I'd rather, like with me there, said, I'd rather not have it. And she's like, okay, like that's what we're doing then. But like, be aware of what we're doing. And his argument was, well, I'll be 18. I'll do it on my own, right? When I get 18, I'm just going to make these choices anyway. Maybe. But we've all been 15 and said we were going to do things when we were 18. And we got to 18. We're like, actually, I don't know if I actually want to go there or smoke that or marry that person anymore. Like, I'm not sure that's actually my life goals anymore.
Yeah. Then again at 20 and then again at 25 and then again at 30.
So like we do mature and grow, and the Lord is very, very good, and we live through it somehow by his grace. So I would just note that there are opportunities to keep our kids safe, to help them grow well. And when we talk about my own kids, so what this looks like for us, 11, 9, and 7, or 6, excuse me. She did tell me the other day, she got her ears pierced. She's like, Dad, these make me look 7, which I think she meant 27 in her mind. She was like, I'm basically an adult now. I've arrived. But with our kids, we do have different tech access, and we try to say yes. So for our home, we don't have a TV inside the house. We have like this outdoor space that allows an outdoor TV. So like Owen, oldest, is super into baseball. He's watching playoff baseball outside. And we have specific times and ways to do that. But it's a smart TV. We have passwords on it. We have a Wi-Fi, what I would call a hedge. We use a Griffin router that lets us set viewing preferences and times and like that.
Blacklists and whatnot.
Yeah. So it's as safe as you can make a piece of internet connected technology. So we have the safety measures, but we do have the technology. We use something like Khan Academy. So Khan Academy is an online school, and it does a great job with math, an area that Anna and I, both as language arts and then she an honors English teacher, would say like, that's not our strongest suit. And we have 2 of our 3 so far are quite adept at the maths. And so how do we help them grow in that? Well, we do a time on a device. And I have 2 Mac devices. You can use Google Family Link if you have a PC device, but I use Screen Time, and I can lock it in so there's only one website that can be accessed. And you can use the computer, you can go on there, but like one website is it. You can enter any other website you want, but it won't go there. And there's no like enter this into Google Maps and then click the link and it'll take you there, or enter this into a Pages document and it'll take you there. Like, it's very locked down. It's very successful at doing what it needs to do. And we'll set a timer. I'll be like, great, you've got 15 minutes. We're doing Khan Academy. In fact, we did that this morning before school. Like, great, part of your morning routine is 10 minutes of Khan Academy so that you can go through it. And it just generates math problems. You get 7 in a row, you pass that skill and you move on to the next skill. Very sequential, great for organized minds that like math. So we do use, that's a pretty high level technology, right? It's a fancy computer with fancy internet stuff and a very intentional amount of accountability with it. So what we don't have is we don't have gaming consoles. My life is really easy because I struggled with gaming. And so it's been 14 years since I played a video game. And so I get to say like, well, your dad has issues, so you don't get to play video games at home. And by the way, I always like to give people free license. If you want to say, hey, we know a guy who had issues with video games, you don't get to blame me. That's great. I would love to take the fall on that. But in our conversation, we don't have games. We don't have personal devices that kids can walk into rooms with. When our school goes 1-to-1, which they will in junior high, we will have those 1-to-1 devices not be allowed on Wi-Fi at home. And if they are allowed, they will be allowed for the one specific site they're given. So it's like an eSchool Plus or whatever to check their grades and turn in assignments. They'll be given that one through our network, that one opportunity. And then for a certain window, like great, from 3 to 4. But then that device gets shut down and doesn't have Wi-Fi anymore. And when you get a smartphone, it's going to stay in our kitchen. So you're not dropping hotspots and getting third-party devices online and accessing the internet outside of our accountability, because it's not that we don't trust you, it's that we don't trust the internet. Like, we know that you're kids that generally try to do what's right, but we also know that you're kids. You don't have a frontal cortex that's designed for inhibiting behavior yet. You say yes to anything that's exciting and new. And the internet is full of exciting and new that could really scorch your brain. So that's how we are saying yes to it. We intentionally build in what I like to call analog adventures. So I will overpay on things like Legos and paints and board games. So many board games. We'll overpay for that. It costs generally more to buy a board game than it does a video game. And that's including video games that are $70 or $80 now new. Board games are more than that. But It's hard to get overstimulated playing a board game. It's really hard to meet an unsafe stranger playing a board game. And it's really hard to run into unsolicited pornography in a board game. So I'm going to spend, and think of it as paying $70 for a game and $50 to make sure that there's no pedophiles. Like, I would pay that money. So we have some pretty solid boundaries around those things. That's how our family works. It's not everyone's rules, but you do need to at least be intentional in those conversations and find what excites your kids. Maybe it's organized sports. Maybe it's airsoft or Nerf guns or archery or songs or learning to, like Hadley just joined ballet and she loves ballet. I think mainly for the tutus, but like do those things, get your child engaged and have opportunities for failure, for relationships, and for processing their personal anxieties, because that's how they're going to get good at being digital friends and citizens.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it was music. Nothing is a tougher lesson than trying to play an instrument proficiently. For me, that was I love it. And I also hate
What do you
it,
play?
but I also love it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
What do you play?
I play guitar, trumpet, and piano, but
Okay.
I'd say of all three, the trumpet was my passion throughout my middle school and high school years. And, it's just one of those things where, for me personally, I will always, always, always push children to learn music, because it's something that you can do even if you're paralyzed from the waist down.
Yeah.
You can always do it no matter how old you are. You can always pick up a guitar and strum a tune. You can always sit down at the piano and plink a tune.
Yeah.
And it's something that, for me personally, is very cathartic and very spiritually calming.
Yeah.
I love to sit down in my quiet time and, maybe play my trumpet for the Lord or something like that. And, being able to do that as an older man is something that I fondly look back on and think, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, for spending your money on this instrument and struggling through those years of watching me play horribly. But, I was...
Great way to fail. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I was thinking back to something you had mentioned a little bit earlier about you had met some 20-somethings that have basically sworn off technology to their children. And it occurred to me, like, okay, when I was growing up, I knew I had friends that would say things like, I will never touch alcohol, or I will never smoke cigarettes, because their parents were chain smokers or their parents were career alcoholics.
Yeah.
And here we are in 2025, and now we have this generation of kids that perhaps didn't have a mother and father because they were plugged in and tuned out, and now they want nothing to do with technology. And I just thought, what an amazing turn of events. It's just incredible to watch how integrated into our society it has become, and the necessary evil of it all. It doesn't matter what the platform is. There's always going to be good side and a bad side. But I wanted to move along here before we run out of time.
Yeah. Before we do, let me put a pin on that last
please,
spot,
please.
because I want to point out to families, there's so much fear of, like, my kid's going to get wrecked by this, right? And they will be damaged goods. And there is absolutely some truth to, like, yeah, you see pornography at 10, like, that's going to add weight to your life that didn't need to be there. You could have avoided that. Or if you get overstimulated as a 4-year-old because you have an individual iPad and your brain, you're not getting proper sleep, like, that will stick with you. There's hardware in your body and development that will get damaged. And I don't want to gloss over that. Yep. And we are seeing the kids that were given the worst of it. We gave them smartphones at 10, 11, 12. We let them spend a decade of their life on the internet with strangers before we realized this is horrible. We're doing an incredible disservice to the entire generation. And those young people are the very ones turning their back on the technology. And they're not helpless. They're not hopeless. There absolutely is damage done. The same as, when we smoked in our babies' faces for a whole generation and a half. But that damage is not devaluing the individuals. And so even if you have a kid who's had really unhealthy tech choices up to this point, like, it's absolutely worth engaging. It's even
Yeah.
if they're 23, 24, like engage the conversation where it's at and ask them about their goals and how this all is going, because there's a very good chance in talking with 20 somethings myself, people understand they have issues. They don't know what healthy looks like. We have to be trained to understand healthy relationships, healthy living, healthy habits and rhythms. And most of us grew up with technology moderating what we did. And we don't actually know what real friendships look like or real healthy options look like. I know as an adult, like I've had to be trained to some of these things because people are like, well, he'll grow out of it. And we just assumed it was ingrained that we knew how to do these things and we would eventually come to our own and recognize what adulting looks like. And we haven't. So have the hard conversations. No one's damaged goods. It is important. And no, it's not just natural to be an adult and be healthy. We actually have to learn that from the people around us. So,
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things for me was I became a tradesman at a very early age, and it took me probably a good 4 or 5 years to understand that I had to stay at work to make money. I couldn't just I didn't just because I was employed doesn't mean I make
just
money. I
go.
mean, I had to do the work, and my attention span was just absolutely horrendous because I was used to this instant gratification that technology gave me. And we're
Yeah,
talking late 90s technology, which
right.
pales in comparison to today's technology.
Right. No
So,
smartphones yet. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, that's one thing that for me personally, being a tradesman taught me over time was that, well, not taught me, I should say, gave me back my ability to have an attention span,
Yeah.
you know. But I wanted to talk to you. Your book emphasizes hope over fear when it comes to tech. Can you unpack how the gospel reframes the way parents should view screens in their homes?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the gospel is the good news that God saves sinners and equips them for good works. Ephesians 2:1-10 is my favorite on this because 1-3 talks about how we were all walking in our flesh and we're by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind, pursuing the passions of our flesh. And I love that because Paul is writing it, and Paul's passion of his flesh was the scriptures. Like he was a full-time Pharisee and his day job was making sure that people didn't break the law, the moral law of the Bible. And he made it his full-time job to kill followers of the way and to hunt down followers of Jesus. His fleshly passion was a misplaced passion for God's righteousness. And so he said, we're all there. Even like, sure, we think of debauchery as like, oh, those people, they get drunk or they smoke those things or they sleep with those. They have those things, greed, envy. His was self-righteousness. I'm going to go around and make sure that everyone's as good as me because I'm the best one.
Yes.
So we have all of us do that, or as we read in Ephesians 4, that we have an old self with its deceitful desires. We believe we could be good enough and the world could be made in our image if we were just given enough power and leverage. Then he says, but God, Ephesians 2:4, being rich in mercy because of the great love with which he loved us, made us his own and to look like his son, Jesus Christ. Like through his son's death and resurrection, made us alive in him. And then he goes on to say, by grace you've been saved. And then 2:10 is, for by grace you've been saved, for good works which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in. And this idea that we're saved by grace, not because we're good enough, not because we proved it to God, not because we did the right thing long enough, but because God picked us and he loves us and has saved us and made us new creations in Christ. And then we're not saved from the world, though. We're saved for it. He's prepared good works for us to do. And that is the point of the indwelling Holy Spirit, is so we can know God, we can repent of our sins. That's where renewal happens. And then to walk in what he's calling us to do, have, and be, the good works of seeing his kingdom come and his will be done. And I think that is the gospel piece connected then to tech is, all right, well, what does that look like in our daily tech life? And the short version is we use all the tech that makes us look more like Jesus and none of the tech that distracts us from him. And the kind of digging deep into that would be, you look at Galatians 5:19-21, you have a whole list of bad fruit. So if you play video games or listen to music or read the news or, engage in social media or stream shows, and it produces envy, and division and dissension and fits of anger and lust and greed, then, or idolatry, putting anything on the throne of your heart and saying, I'll be okay if I can get this thing, then that's bad fruit. And your question needs to be, is it the type of tech I'm using, the time I'm using the tech, or the amount of this tech I'm consuming? Because you are told to cut off and gouge out anything that causes you to sin. And then we're given Galatians 5:22, where we're told the fruit of the Spirit, the stuff that you produce when you're connected to the vine, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control.
And that rolls right into Philippians.
And rolls right into Philippians 4:8. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, of course, 4:8.
Yeah. 4:8, like we are given a standard for what we should be consuming then. Yes. And it doesn't mean don't engage hard conversations. It doesn't mean don't be up on the news. It means if you read the news and your heart goes, that makes sense, of course they're doing this, well, that's cynicism. And that's not a fruit of the Spirit. Cynicism says those people are so bad. If they were just more like me, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, cynicism and narcissism, the two isms that technology force feeds you.
And we are more than happy to give it. Because again, it's what Saul said during his pursuit of God of like, give me letters for Damascus because some of those people are over there and I'm going to go crush them. Like literally killing who would eventually become his brothers and sisters in Christ. He made martyrs of them thinking he was doing the right thing. Yeah. And we can all too quickly do that ourselves or produce other bad fruit. I would say if you have any technology you use or your kids use that produce love, joy, and self-control, buy it, use it, celebrate it, buy one for someone else. Like use those things. And I would say in our lives, the technology for our family, like there's some great shows. Our kids watch the Wild Kratts shows with Chris and Martin Kratt, and we watch their awe at nature be inspired. We watch something called The Americas, which is a documentary, kind of like that BBC special about, oh my goodness, Planet Earth. But they look at just North and South America and the animals and the plants and the weather and like do a great job of showing like this is happening whether you're there or not. Like we just tried to get cameras on it so you could be amazed at this planet we live at. And it's not a very long jump to be like, that's a whole lot of diversity and design there. I wonder what we're doing, right? Like, how can we steward this well in this creation God made? What an amazing God we have. And so those are things that we've used. They're highly technological. They are delivered through entertainment technology, but they build awe and joy. And when we go to the library, I now have children who are drawing out, books of nature and creation, and they are amazed and they have questions and it inspires them. So you get 20, 30 minutes of, entertainment technology and hours of them, being inspired and amazed. Like I'm willing to make that trade. And so I think that's when we're thinking about the technology we use, when we think about connecting the gospel to our daily tech lives, it needs producing good fruit. It needs to be tech that makes us look more like Jesus and that helps us convey the gospel, not just in evangelism, but in action, that there is a gospel that we are to live out that is part of the putting on of the new self, that we walk by faith. If you read Hebrews 11, everything that those individuals listed who were saved by faith, Abel offered a sacrifice that was right. By faith, Moses followed God's lead. Like there's always an action that comes after the by faith. And so, yes, you're saved by grace through faith, and that faith is a verb. It's something you do. And I think that's what we have to come down to when it comes to tech, is there's an action. Some of it's hard action of pruning, and you're cutting off stuff because God's better. In my life, that was video games. God's better than video games. I can trust him to be good enough, even better than my favorite pastime and the thing I do with my friends and my outlet and the thing I said I needed for stress relief. God's better. I don't need video games, even if I really like them, because they're self-destructive and harming me. And for others, maybe it's I don't need an app store. I don't need social media on my phone. It's more convenient. But if it causes me to sin, like if I regularly make a mistake that's bringing sin and death, and I can trace it back to a singular source, then I need to faithfully cut off that source because I believe God is better. It's an act of faith to take that action. And that's what we're doing. For some of us, it's an act of faith to allow our children some of those digital independences that they've shown us faithfulness in little things as they continue to grow into the person God is designing them to be, because God's the one who saves them. It's not us. And for some of us, an act of faith to have the hard conversations and to draw the hard line because we know this is self-destructive and bad. And while we don't see hope for it turning around, we also aren't going to be party to their destruction because we love them. We don't hate them. We give good gifts, not harmful ones. So that is how the gospel connects to the practical aspects of our daily tech use.
That's an incredible answer. And, you know, it's not without want that, you know, scriptures such as Philippians 4:8 and, you know, the book of Ephesians and the book of Hebrews and stuff like that. You know, the scripture also says there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
You know, and how these principles are so eternal and everlasting. It doesn't, though we're talking about tech in specific, any time space continuum, any time space that your little body timeshare was given here on this earth, the principles still apply.
Yeah.
The principles still apply. And how easily we can get distracted and say, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. The whole time the scripture's there waiting for you to pick it up and read it and believe and trust in the Lord that these things are true and pure and of the Spirit. And should you abide by them, the Lord will abide with you. And like you said, the man who sells the field, sells everything he has, and gains Christ, lost nothing at all.
Yeah. Amen.
So in your book, you talked about contradictory research.
Yeah. Yeah.
And could you explain a little bit about that? And, you know, perhaps since you've written the book, is there anything about the contradictory research that is now updated or worse or new?
Yeah, I would say we've had lots of clarifications since that book. So that book came out 2 years ago, right around the time that The Anxious Generation came out. And since then, yeah, we've gained almost universal understanding of something is wrong. Some of this is because it's been long enough. I mean, the like button was 2011 is like the first time we start getting any research on it. And so you only have 14-ish years of actually trying to figure out how is this technology affecting society and specifically developing brains. So this is the first time we've had 10 years to watch a 6-year-old become 16 and be like, was that good? Do we like the way this is going? And so the major changes we're seeing is smartphone manufacturers are actually making resources for parents to parent. So Google Family Link and Apple Screen Time are two fantastic resources that make your devices so much safer. So actually the way I got rid of my app store is I just had a friend set parental controls. So I set my phone up, they set a code, and my app store is like the content restrictions are set. And so my browser defaults to safe mode, which means if you were to look up something on purpose that was pornographic, it would actually show up blurred on the first page. Mm-hmm. So you have to click a second time to make a mistake. And then with the extra bonus of Covenant Eyes, like someone else is going to see that. And I love that. Like they're not spying on me. I'm asking them to be another set of eyes in the room because turns out we make a lot fewer mistakes when other people watch us make them, right? Like it's great. It's
when there's accountability at stake. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It just makes it's what I like to tell high school students when they talk about self-control, especially in Christian environments. Like we want to make good choices. We just it's so hard. We're so in love. Like we just wish we had more self-control. I'm like, you can invite her father on your next date. Like it's amazing how much distance you'll be able to leave between each other. It's going to be great. It just removes all of the struggle. It's the best. With that in mind, though, as I was trying to say, Google Family Link, Apple Screen Time are two ways that tech companies were forced effectively to make accountability. Those were not design features they suggested. Mm-hmm. Those were people buying stock in their company and showing up at board meetings and being like, we are super angry and we're going to be very vocal opponents of yours until you make this safer for kids. We see the understanding of the mental health crisis in America be public knowledge. I mean, I'm going to say his name wrong. I always mess up his name, but Vivek Murthy, the U.S. Surgeon General, said that 13 is too old. That's the baseline for adulthood online. 13 is too young to be given a smartphone, and that social media is antithetical to mental health for developing teenagers. So that tandem coming from the U.S. Surgeon General was not public accepted information prior to 2022. That's a big deal for us now to be able to point to those and say, hey, like the U.S. Surgeon General acknowledges it. The Center for Disease Control did a U.S. study that said teen girls in the U.S., 3 out of 5 said that they've experienced prolonged bouts of sadness and loneliness. Boys were 1 in 3. Of those 3 and 5 girls, a third of them said that they had considered taking their own lives. Like, we're dealing with an anxiety and a mental health crisis we've never seen in human history. That 1 in 3 of our teenage girls, who are the most educated, the most healthy, the most opportunity-rich young people that we've ever raised as humans, say, you know what, I'm thinking about cashing out early. Like, I don't know that this game is worth continuing. That is deeply troubling. And we do know that some of it is causal link with social media, specifically going back to a 2019 internal document that was released in 2021 from Meta, saying that they knew that their social media platform was making girls feel worse about themselves, both their bodies and themselves and their value. So you add that to, as is pointed out in that Mama Bear Apologetics book, you put that sort of technology that can make someone feel worse into an environment where complete relativism reigns. So what you feel is what you are. But what if I feel worthless? Like, that's troubling. Like, that's all great when you're talking about being an astronaut, I guess. Like, all right, go get them. But like, we have technology that is actively destroying the self-worth of young people. And then we're telling them what you feel is what you are. And we are watching that implode. So we now know that as a group. We know that pornography pivots public consumption habits rather than reflects them. We know that social media has a deleterious, anyway, a negative effect. I try to use too big of a word. But I'm going to look it up afterwards to make sure I know how to spell it. Anyway, I distracted myself. And so we do have that you do not find. So when I started this in 2019 and going back to even 2016, you were actively being hit with research on video games are good. I had kids coming into my room all the time. My video games make me better. Look at the research that says higher IQ, better hand-eye coordination, better dark light vision.
Yeah.
You don't see that. The World Health Organization in must have been 2019, because it was pretty early in the game, came out with hey, we're going to include gaming addiction as actually one of these medical disorders that people can begin treating. And the U.S. lost their gourds. You will find the U.S. medical compendium doesn't include that. And the reason, and I paraphrase, is because most of the research was done in Asia. That was their big pushback for the first 3 years, was like, well, I mean, that's over there. Like, we clearly are very different and we don't struggle with those things. And they've started to come around. They started pushing on them. Well, we don't like the word addiction. But okay, like, you can call this a house fire, you can call this a roof fire, but at the end of the day, the structure's burning. Like, it ain't going well, and we need to figure out what's happening. And the numbers now are anywhere between 2 to 5% of gamers are struggling with compulsive gaming, and it pivots into addicting when they start giving up what they need to get to what they want. So if you're giving up sleep, if you're giving up work, if you're giving up food, if you're giving up relationships, if you're giving up other priorities in order to get to your gaming habit, then we have an issue, and that's potentially moving from compulsive to addictive. We now know all that, and we can say that bold-faced without people saying we sound backwards or very 2007 or right. Like, we can do that without sounding like a Luddite and someone who just doesn't get it, because people would, and they'll still say it, but it doesn't stand very well, where they're like, this is what people said about the bicycle and the printing press. And they did. People freaked out when the horseless carriage showed up. Some things were right. They talked about the degradation of society and the way that we're going to get more separated. And in America, that couldn't be more true. We have societies that are not at all walkable because we're built around the car, and you work an unreasonable distance from where you live. I live in a community here in Washington State where, I mean, people drive 90 minutes to 2 hours to work. They're spending 4 hours.
That's 3 miles.
It's under 30. And they're spending 4 hours in the car, and they're with their family less than that. Like, that is important. So there were certainly some cultural norms to be aware of and to think through, but what we're talking about right now is technology that's fighting healthy choices. I like to
Yes.
call it tool tech that helps us create. In the book I reference this, drool tech that helps us consume. And when we talk about drool tech, it is fighting healthy tech. Reed Hastings, CEO and co-founder of Netflix, a number of years ago said that their main competitors weren't other streaming services. Their main competitor was sleep.
Right.
That where they were looking to build their market value wasn't by taking share from others because they just owned the market.
Mm-hmm.
It was to get people to stay up a little longer than they intended to stay. That's that
It's the law of big numbers. Every hour times a million people is that much more revenue.
Yeah. And that's the idea behind shorts. If you go on YouTube, you have 2.5 billion monthly users. If you just get one person out of 10 to stay for an extra minute, you gain 173,000 days worth of viewing that month. So take 2 30-second shorts in the course of a month. That's worth a lot of money to you. So they don't necessarily care about healthy choices. They care about eyes on screens. And that's what we need to think about as we think through it. That is more common knowledge now. Again, even that stat, for a while, people are like, I get it, behavioral adjustment, but why do I care? If I want to do it, I don't see what the problem is. And the problem is you can be convinced you need things you didn't want. That's the beauty of operant conditioning, is you can actually pivot someone's goals through a number of small choices. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and move your favorite app on your phone to a different folder and see how many times you autopilot click the wrong app in the next 3 days. You're not clicking the app because you're choosing to. You're clicking the app because you've built a habit to. And it's going to be triggered by boredom. It's going to be triggered by anxiety. It's going to be triggered by work stress. You're going to go to your phone at times you don't even notice you're going to your phone because you're really good at doing what your text suggests. So,
oh my goodness, yes.
Technology's changed. I would say it's not as misleading anymore. I get very little pushback anymore about this really isn't a thing. You're just making it too big. And I mean, I'm in Washington State, so I've spoken at Microsoft. I've spoken to people that are designing the headsets for Valve and for Meta. And I've been in the room where it happens, and those people, while they're great at making amazing products, they don't know how to parent it any more than the rest of us.
Yeah,
and
they're
that's
not ethicists.
Yeah, and even when they are, they're ethicists at their little niche piece of ethics, and that's where my weird niche is I'm actually just really good with middle schoolers, and so I'll go and take the rest of this, but it is important for us to think through and be intentional about, because the research is in right now, and it doesn't have to be unhealthy. And I'll end on this, probably the one that's gained the most public consent. If we had this conversation 3 months ago, there would have been more dissenting opinions on this, but the game Roblox is inherently unsafe for developing brains.
I've heard all the latest news on that.
And up until 3 months ago, people were like, man, you just don't like it. You just need to get on board. This is just what some people enjoy. And now most people are like, no, we've looked into it. It's pretty awful. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. I'm not bashing the format. I'm saying if you're going to have a Portal game that's fan made and company supported, then you are absolutely responsible for what minors engage. And there's no way to ensure that your child will go on there and 100% of the time have a positive and pedophile-free experience. And that is whereas private server Minecraft, 100% of the time, if they're using your private server, you can ensure that that's going to be a safe experience. You can't ensure that right now in Roblox. Now, just in the last week, they've made major changes for chat and for uploading and for contact with minors, and a lot of positive things that are bummers for streamers. But you know what? I get it. I'm going to choose kids over streamers. So while that is a bummer, you also went pro on a platform that was inherently unsafe for kids. So sorry, not sorry. Anyway,
a huge walk back. Huge walk back. And Lord willing, it stays, and they realize they can make money while still being safe for kids. Cause that's kind of been their argument but we're a publicly traded company. And they're like, okay. Yeah, I get it. You're a publicly traded company. Make it safe for kids, man. But that being said, no, the conflicting research about it's helping you, it's really better for society. There were books called Humanity 2.0. That we were reaching our next level of existence, that our brains were going to adapt to these new technologies to the point where it was going to make us better at everything. We have firmly seen isn't true.
It doesn't have
It's
to be
funny
unsafe.
because Disney's rendition of the City of the Future was just a sweet kitchen. I mean, that's basically it. I mean, it's a kitchen that is better than the one you have.
Yeah.
But, I was thinking about watching when I was in high school in the 90s. I watched the genesis of girls losing all hope of self-esteem,
Mm.
losing all hope of um, self-respect, um, because nothing was real.
Mm.
And we went from this paradigm shift where when you were and I when I was a child, I was told, come home when the sun goes down.
Yeah.
I lived 3 blocks from the Skagit River, which is a river that you don't screw around with. It's not a stream, it's not a mud puddle. It is a torrent of water that
Yeah.
kills people every year.
Yeah.
And then my parents were fine with that. Now everybody's
It's a
in their
risk we're
house.
willing to pay.
I survived.
What if he
Now
shot him in the
now
face?
all the kids are locked in their homes.
Yeah.
They are on their screens. But to my point, when we were kids, altercations lasted an hour a day. Yeah, all of us neighborhood kids got sassy or angry when so and so cheated at flag football or stickball or whatever it was, but we got over it and we played the next day, and the bullies were bullies and the nice kids were nice kids, and the girls played with the girls and the boys played with the boys, and everything was cool. But all of a sudden we watched this paradigm shift where now everything is permanent. Everything is set in stone. Every picture you take on social media, especially at the beginning, not so much now. They have adjusted the rules to where you can delete certain things and have it literally permanently be gone. But at the genesis, there was none of that. It was, if you posted something, if you wrote something, if you commented, it was there forever.
Yeah.
And I watched as this generation didn't understand how to cope with that at such a young age. The online bullying, the unreal expectations of what a girl should look like.
Yeah.
The girls taking the selfies, and these days you don't know what's real. The filtering programs and software they have out there make things absolutely impossible to tell what's real and what's not. So I really don't know where I was going with that. It didn't really have a question at the end, but I wanted to just reaffirm that, besides the gaming and the pornography, like, it's a real thing for a developing mind to not know how to cope with someone who has a developed mind and is out to get them online.
Yeah. Unsafe. That is the hard part of the internet, having unsafe adults. There's no kid internet. It's made for adults. And when they want to be unsafe, or they know that kids are fish in a barrel in a game that's a majority minors, it can get really unsafe really quick. And for parents who want to know, or grandparents who want to know, well, what do we do? The best thing you can do is remove the unhealthy tech and replace it with real life experiences that involve some level of risk, like real life risk, both of failure, so something they may not be an ace at the first time, and of some kind of harm. So go learn to fish on that Skagit River, because you're going to fail at fishing and you could get hurt out there, or ride your bike someplace, because at the end of the day, your body can heal faster than your mind can. And we know what putting them on the internet too young will do to their minds, and it's not good. So we would rather build up that resiliency in real life, get those real world experiences. Actually, Jonathan Haidt says it's risk, responsibility, and then free play, unparent guided. So organized sports don't fall into that, but stickball in the back with the baseball team. Like, hey, before practice or after practice, we're going to have a couple guys over and we're going to play in the cul-de-sac or the lot or whatever. That would count as that. But getting our children real world experiences is needed. And I don't want to sound like if we just went back to the good old days, things would be fine, because we had a pair of world wars before the internet. People were still evil. What we need is heart change. We need God to make us new creations, not just better versions of ourselves. But we also need to recognize what we are doing when we throw our kids on the internet in the name of being modern or of preparing them for adulthood. We need to make sure we are being intentional with the risks we give them and the access we give others to them. And that is where healthy tech choices are going to be key. And I'll give two. Get tech out of your bedrooms. No one needs $1,000 alarm clock, which we often, that's the main excuse I hear for why we have smartphones in our bedroom. And that includes get smart TVs, get gaming consoles, get anything that has internet access. I would include e-readers in that. Buy your kid a physical book, or go to the library. But even if you had to buy a book, if that's just your bedtime book and they read one a week, that's still cheaper than counseling. So buy them a book a week and let them use e-readers the rest of their time. And then get tech out of dinners. Have meal times be screen free. So no shows on. And again, right now, playoff baseball. Mariners are still currently in it. I don't know when this is going to air, but they're still currently in it. Come on, Mariners. But like, all right, so you want to have a family night and watch a special thing, or it's Friday movie night. Like, okay, but we're saying your typical meals, your breakfast together, your dinner together, whatever meal you get is going to be screen free. We're not checking for work. We're not checking with friends. We're with each other, and we're going to process those two first and begin the process of using tech well.
Yeah. So for parents that are just starting out down this road, what is the best quick advice that you can give them that can at least help them get started down a path to healthier tech use in their home?
I mean, the first one is the location. Change tech location. You can do it tonight. You can do it while they're gone. Uninstall their TV, pull their gaming devices up, find a public space for them to use it. So that's it. That in the mealtime, set really intentional tones of like, we're all in this, we're all doing it. And like, we're beginning as a family because this is about intentionality of time together. So that's easy win, number one. The second would be begin thinking about tech health. So I mentioned there's two kinds. There's tool that helps you create and drool that helps you consume. If you need a vision for those, that's Microsoft Word is tool tech. It never sends you a notification or sets a goal for you. Whereas YouTube would be kind of the archetype of drool tech. It helps you accomplish your goals, but it always has a goal of its own and wants to take your time, focus, and money. So then once you know those, the question is it healthy? Are we doing okay? And there's an acronym called a reset. So once you've phone away from meal times, so screen-free meals, screen-free rooms, then we're going to look at tech health. And we look at relationships, emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time. And that's an acronym reset. And we simply say, does tech get in the way of any of these? So if you use social media and you're a worse friend, well, that's a responsibility that you're doing worse with because of the presence of social media or presence of technology. And that then gives you your talking point. So your talking point to your child would be, hey, I've noticed when you're on social media, you fight more with your friends. Have you seen that? And let them say yes or no or explain it. Okay. Hey, I've noticed when you play this video game, you're meaner to your sister. And your child might say, no, it's because she's annoying. You'd be like, no, she's always annoying. But you're more mean to her when you play this game. The assessment isn't simply to catch someone doing something wrong. It's to equip you to have that loving conversation, because the conversation is what matters. Yes, you could unilaterally just remove all the bad tech, but you've done nothing for the heart that was misusing it. And that's really what we're trying to get to. So emotions, hey, I've noticed you need this to be okay. That was games with me. I needed video games. They were the way I medicate. I would say, yeah, but this is the way I blow off steam. This is my escape. And I just need this to be able to play these games. And then I can go on and deal with life. And the response should have been, and would be, I would challenge you to speak to your unhealthy gamers or whatever they might use, is I hear that. And I know that you're playing those games and telling yourself you need that for your release. You need that for your personal time. But then I should see you being better afterwards. I should see you having more joy, more energy, being more present. And it's not happening. Instead, you just start planning for the next time you can escape to that technology again. So they might say, I need my music in order to feel less anxious, and be like, that's fine. If music, you said playing your trumpet, and you can be an act of worship. Like you can listen to music and you can create music as an act of worship, and it levels you. You were anxious and now you have peace and joy. You were stressed out and now you can sleep and be calm. Or you listen to music and you get further isolated and more emotionally withdrawn and right, like less engaged with reality in the world. And you have to have a hood and an AirPod in all the time with a low drip of lo-fi just to make it through. That's coping. That's not recovery. So
Did you just say low drip of lo-fi?
I did.
Oh, Nathan, that is classic.
I just,
Woo!
yeah.
That hit home, brother. That hit home.
But it is real, and I'm not blaming anyone, but let's call it what it is. Like, that's us coping in that case. So how do we get to the point where we're okay in our own skin? So relationships, responsibilities, emotions, sleep. Just if we have a smartphone in our room, sleep, or if we have drool tech in our room, our sleep is impeded. Enjoyment, not that we like using this tech, but that everything else wilts in its presence. So we've all seen young people get around a new tech and seen every other interest in their life just completely die on the vine. And that's that's what we're looking for. We're not just looking for, like, when my kids watch Wildcrats and they get more inspired and then that feeds their passion in another area. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to see that. That's great. Like, cool. You can keep watching this because I like the outcome. Or, they use Khan Academy and they feel more encouraged about their math work. Or my oldest likes to use Scratch for coding. And it's really high-end tech, and he makes video games using Scratch.
That is an incredible tool.
It's a great tool. So go use Scratch, but Scratch has player-made games, and we have had to put limits around games and time that he can even play those games, because he will quit doing the creative side and just start consuming, even though it's through the same platform. And so we have to have those conversations. So that's what we're looking for. So if you've moved tech out of the bedroom and you have screen-free dinners and you understand there's two kinds of tech, helps you create and consume, the next thing to do is look at that reset for yourself and for your family, and then begin building what I would call hedges around your network, your wireless internet, your personal devices, the things you use that have internet connection, and your family. Set some ground rules, make some conversational talking points so your kids aren't shocked when you come in and say, hey, that didn't line up with we don't use devices at the dinner table. Like, that's one of our boundaries for our family, to keep tech at bay, to make sure that we go to it. Andy Crouch has two great books, but the Tech-Wise Family is the first to read, and it talks about using tech on purpose and keeping tech in its proper place. That's actually why we don't have a TV in our home. Again, we want access TV. We want to be able to watch the playoffs. We want to have family movie night, but we don't need all our furniture facing it. Like, it's not that important to us. So, like, we have furniture face other furniture. So when you sit down in this room, you look at people. And again, that's not judgment of others. We read this book, and my wife and I were heavily convicted that, oh man, like, we just put our TV on a wall and had furniture face it because that's what you do. But that actually doesn't reflect what we want our house to be about. And people will notice. I had a 7-year-old walk through my house, and he did one loop, and he came back in the kitchen and was like, you don't have a TV in here. I was like, right? Like
what kind of trailer park is this?
Yeah, what are you guys doing? But it is notable as a choice, because it's a deliberate one, and you do notice. And so, and by the way, please don't think that that's been in dreamland. My wife and I regularly have returning conversations. She highly values TV and has a lot of nostalgia, and wants, the couch years. Paddington 3 talks about the couch years where your whole family fits on one couch and you get these shared experiences. She wants that. And I'm like, I could probably do without it. Like, I played video games instead of watching TV because I'd rather have the adventure than watch someone else have it. And I don't get to play video games, but I still don't want to watch other people have all the fun. Like, let me go do something. So it's a regular prayerful conversation. I don't want to make it sound like it's overly simplified.
Binary choice.
Yeah.
It's not a binary choice. Yeah.
Right. And so work out whatever works best for your family. Just know that is a conversation to have. Those are the kind of ground rules when we talk about hedges. It can be as simple as where tech ends up. That can be a healthy boundary. So do those things. We talked about hedges, device, network, and then family, and then assess your reset, because that's how we get to the loving talking points. And I'll end on this. I get asked all the time. I talk at mom co-groups and churches, and I'll get asked, what if my spouse plays too many video games? How do I talk about it? Reset. Reset is how you go to your spouse and say, I love you. We're covenantally committed to each other. And I've noticed video games seem to be impeding your relationships, emotions, sleep, enjoyment, time, like one or more of those. And then that conversation of, I know you say this is your release and your outlet, and I'm not seeing it feed. So maybe it is, and you just need this in order to be able to cope. But what do we need to change in the rest? Like, is your job killing you? Are you mentally unwell and we need to go talk to a professional counselor or look at medication? Like, I understand coping, but that is what it is. Like, it's not a long-term solution. So please use what you need to be well now. And this isn't tenable for long-term. And that's a very loving, well within your purview as a loving spouse, or a loving parent, or a loving grandparent, or a friend, to say, I love you. This doesn't seem to be working out. What's going on?
And also be prepared for, and I love what you said, be prepared for when you bring something like that up to a spouse. How did it go? The quality of my shame equals the quantity of my excuses. So when you bring something like that up to a spouse, they're going to have every excuse under the sun, because perhaps it's not a comfortable conversation to have that, well, I don't have a problem. It's just this, or it's just that, or it's just this, or it's just that. But, give them some time to think about it. And if they truly love you, they will come around.
Yeah. And I know it's loaded, and I know that some people just don't like video games. And so they're going to come after that. I'm not saying your spouse has to quit games. I'm saying the conversation needs to come down to your love for them. You go in prayerfully, and have specific, in that reset, gives you really tangible things to talk about that may be coming from other areas. And they might go, oh, I get it. Like, that is not a good outcome. And here's what's actually happening. Is this other situation going on over here. And this is just kind of getting tied up. It's a symptom rather than a cause.
Indeed.
But that is how you do it. And I love the quality of my shame, the quantity of my excuses.
No, when I read that, I that stuck with me for sure. Yeah. What a gut punch.
Yeah.
I mean, to say that out loud and then think, where am I failing in that area? I mean, it's absolutely true. Nathan, I would like you to, well, I guess I have one more question for you.
Okay.
It's now 2025.
It is.
And over the last, I'd say 2 years, AI has become and is becoming the new threat.
Yeah.
The new looming threat to, nobody knows where it's going. Nobody can foresee. I don't care how smart you are. Nobody can really foresee where this is going to go, or how this is going to end up in 1 to 5, 10 years. Who knows? God forbid there should be an iteration above AI. Yeah. Has the Lord given you any insight or wisdom or modifications to your lecture series or way of teaching and speaking that involves this new and looming threat, for lack of a better term?
Yes. So it's another content area that I didn't want to talk about. Like, we'll let that deal with other people, but have felt consistent conviction that I need to help equip people to think through it. So yes, it's become a part of the conversation. I'm actually flying out to Minnesota to talk with youth about AI, and then actually to do like a senior section. So you mentioned the people, you're like, oh, I could teach people how to use their phones. It's literally like what is AI and what is it doing? So we're going to walk through, like, here's the different types. You have conversational AI, you have relational AI, you have graphic and generative AI, and then you have like your programming and creative AI, and then others within that. But if you were going to go broad spectrum, and so we're going to walk through those. So, I mean, ChatGPT, you can go in and just talk to it, tell it to write a poem. It works like a really fancy search engine. And then you have relational AI. So what was it? Just relational.ai was the website that got bought by, I think it was Google, but hold me on that. But that's one of the ones involved in a lawsuit because a young person used it and came to a tragic end because of a lack of health. And the AI was not programmed to catch on that things were taking a turn south, and to kind of pull the plug and say this young person doesn't have the emotional wherewithal to pull out of this tailspin.
Right.
So what we are seeing is something like 3/4 of young people use relational AI. So if you're not familiar with that, relational AI is programmed to pretend to be an individual. So sometimes it's a character. So they'll be Spider-Man, or they'll be the Joker, or they'll be some character from some show or movie or video game. But sometimes they're just programmed to be another 15-year-old, and they're going to pretend to be a 15-year-old, and you're going to have this relationship with this named 15-year-old, and the bot will have a name. And so you go to, say, Snapchat. Snapchat is a messaging app. You take messages, send them to your friends, they snap you back, or you can kind of DM them. You can text them. But if you wanted, you could message their AI. They have a relational AI that when you open it for the first time will be pinned to the top. You can now remove that AI. So it's not constantly pinned to the top, but that's regular. 3/4 of teens say they use relational AI. Of those, 1/3 of teens say they're as good or better than actual human companionship. So companion AIs or relational AIs are going to be a thing. They're only going to get worse. They are getting to the point where, with the addition of VR, we're having people marry their AIs. You can have intercourse with your AI, and the church is not ready for that. We do not have the philosophical context to handle sex bots. And the idea of like, well, my spouse is really sick, and so they're not relationally available, so I have this avatar version of them, and that is how I am satisfied. And if satisfaction was the point of sex, then I could agree with you. But we don't have a biblical foundation for that conversation. And the church needs to get on its pony and start thinking through, what do we do with the fact that this is still not your spouse, and you are now having a digital affair with someone that just happens to look like your spouse? Like, if you made a clone of your spouse, it wouldn't be biblically sound to have sex with the clone. Like, we would stand on like, nope, that's a person. They just happen to be genetically identical to your spouse, but you're not married to that person. This is no different. That is not your spouse.
Never worked in Star Trek.
I'm just saying this is here. It's already happening, but it's going to be mainstream. It's been happening in parts of Asia for a number of years, and it's getting delivered for under $1,000 now, because that's what our VR sets are now, very accessible, and they're being sold to big box stores. You can go pick them up at Target or Best Buy, or have them shipped through Amazon. So keep that in mind. You have relational AI. It is having a toll on young people. It's having a toll on adults. They are, what is the term? It's AI-induced psychosis, I want to say. It's getting pivoted. They were like, well, psychosis isn't exactly accurate. But the idea is you have healthy adults without a history of mental illness who are going through episodes where they believe they have interacted either with a supernatural being or with the superintelligence, and that the AI is actually helping them discover realities that are beyond what humanity has known.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And I'm not, this isn't fringe. This is happening mainstream. Then you have people who have mental illness there was a tragic situation of a guy who took his own life and his mother's. He was an adult living at home with a history of psychosis. And the AI did not pick up on the paranoia. And he was led to believe that reality from this AI was confirmed. You're not paranoid. This is actually happening. She is out to get you. And he took his own life after taking his mom's. It's happened more than thrice in the last year. And we're 3 years into AI being released on the general market? I think that's when GPT
open source, do you mean?
Yeah, open source, OpenAI released their product to the world. So we need to be aware that that's happening. Then generative AI, when we talk about that, we're talking being able to make videos, being able to make content. So for a while there, it was just, hey, I can make 3D objects by typing it in text, and that's neat. Or now I can make a website by just
with 6 hands.
With 6 hands, right. Now it's got to the point where deepfakes are seamless, to the point where our own president of America is releasing basically slam videos on people he dislikes that are intended to be known that they're fake, but like, that's not great. So now you have Vibe and Sora 2, and these are 2 social media web platforms where they are entirely built around AI-generated content. Two problems. One, your discord from, or your disconnect from reality is a real thing. But two, you can just like, for example, one of the videos is Mario from the Nintendo series Mario in his Mario Kart running away from cops. And that's a cute, silly thing until you realize like that's someone's intellectual property that you just ripped using AI and made whatever video you wanted and posted on a platform that was designed for that. Like, that's horrific. As someone who creates content, I don't just want my content getting ripped. And as a company that needs to be competitive in the market, like the fact that you can just use their intellectual property, like, no, like that's like, we have rules on this stuff. Like that's the whole premise of society, is that we have rules that we abide by that allow other people to have their own personal property.
And to your point, as far as the church not being ready, I mean, we as a church can't wait for the government to catch up to this. Like we need to preemptively be ready for these conversations and for the to know what to look for and to know how to navigate.
Right. And then on the, I guess I skimmed over when I talked about the first conversational or research AI, AI in the classroom is really sticky. I would say never use AI to do something you're not smart enough to vet. So if you want to look up 5 possible movies to go to this weekend, AI could be great for that. Go on, ask it for a list. If you don't know which fertilizer to use in your backyard, go on and ask for a list for what to do. If you need recipes, it can work great. Like these are fine. If you are trying to figure out the doctrine of the Trinity, don't use AI. Don't do that. It is a slippery slope. I would say if you want to use it like a glorified Wikipedia, and you're just looking for the links, you're going to need to use something. And while I don't love everything about it, Grok does a much better job at citing sources so that you can actually go in and find. So Grok is just another AI, grok.com. You could say, hey, I'm researching the Trinity. Give me 5 main sources for and 5 main sources against this particular view of the Trinity. It'll do a great job of giving you kind of the best of. And then you can go to those books and watch those videos and listen to those interviews and like build your own understanding. But good night. The goal of AI, according to Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman, so Sam Altman, co-founder of OpenAI, and Mark Zuckerberg, czar of Meta. Okay, that was facetious. The current president, CEO, and founder of Meta. Their vision for both of them is 24-hour-a-day AI. And by the way, this isn't like off of some, deep internet blog. This was announced by Zuckerberg at their last big tech event last month.
Which means it's been in the works for at least 3 to 5 years.
Yes. So this is like major. This is why they went to Meta as a name instead of being Facebook and Instagram is separate. Like the premise is a meta reality. And his announcement at this event was, hey, we have these glasses. We've partnered with Ray-Ban and Oakley, and we have heads-up display internet available on them. And our goal is 24 hours a day to have the internet be there for you, to have AI be on all the time, always watching and analyzing what you're seeing and then listening and processing conversations. And Sam Altman said, yeah, our actual goal, different conversation now, I'm skipping to an interview, is in sci-fi has been called the Diamond Book. But the premise is if you have something that sees everything you see and hears everything you hear, it reads everything you read, then you will have, for all intents and purposes, a digital version of yourself. It has all the inputs that you have. And so it would end up being kind of like what in Harry Potter, the pictures on the walls where you can talk to them and they have all of the context that person has. So I would be able to ask questions of this and you'd be able to ask it of like a Nathan Sutherland Diamond Book, and you would get Nathan Sutherland's take on whatever the subject might be. It might not be a subject I ever addressed, but given all the context that I had, this is probably how Nathan would have responded. So Dumbledore can be on the wall and give me feedback. It doesn't know anything about the future, but it can pontificate on what I had in my life. And that is literally the goal of AI right now. And Sam Altman actually said it was kind of sweet if you think about it. He was like, my goal is like, I want something that can be with someone all the time. It can be their constant companion. It can give them feedback and it can help them think through difficult times and really make them the best version of themselves. And I was listening and I was like, isn't that what we call the Holy Spirit? Like, isn't that like John 12 through 14 or 14 through 16 that like I'm going away and I will send you the helper who will convict you of sin and who will remind you of all the things that I've said. Like, he said it's better to have the Holy Spirit in us than to have him beside us. Like, that's
Yeah.
literally what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to build a digital version of the Holy Spirit. We want it to be made in our image. We want it to feel like we can control it. But at the end of the day, like, God's done that by giving us his Spirit to indwell all who put their faith in him. And I think that is the main concern with what we're doing with AI. Is this isn't just a cute little project that's here to distract us. It's a very real project to remake technology in our own image and to give ourselves the support we need so we don't have to rely on God.
Yeah, and the irony on it is not lost on me that the unholy trinity is me, myself, and I. So there you
Yeah,
go. Sam Altman's just making a better version of me, myself, and I to do away with Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
yeah, and it is real. It's coming for our children in encouraging them to engage it more and making it really accessible. And on the creative side, the deep fake is heartbreaking. We have young people who are, I mean, participating digitally. So, excuse me, they're not participating. We have, so take young ladies. I don't have the stat on the top of my head, but the number's obscene. It's like 1 in 6. Teenage girls have been deep faked, meaning they've been nudified. They've never posed naked for a picture, but they've had naked pictures of themselves sent out.
Yeah.
Because of these apps that can do that. And this is one of the parts I deeply dislike about Grok.
Yep.
Is Grok does not have
reputation destroying, career destroying.
Yeah, just relational destroyed. I mean, you have a young lady, like I think of my daughter, and when she hits middle school, to have boys passing nudes of her that aren't even real, now that's pivoting how those boys see her in real life. Again, pornography pivots preferences. So now those boys are treating my daughter differently because they saw something that wasn't real. That makes me angry. And it should make us angry. We need to be aware of that. So yes, AI is here to stay. It can be used well. We put up proper boundaries. AI could be an absolute blessing. Do I believe in my eschatology of technology when Jesus comes back that AI will still be here? I think a version of it could be. I think you could have a really cool, beautiful version. But I think that the true beauty of what we've been designed for is hard work and amazement. And amazement comes with the creative wondering we do and finding. And when AI is designed to do it for you, I think we're actually losing more of what makes us in the image of God than gaining. And so I think AI has a place in the classroom. It's very limited, much like a calculator has a place in a math class, or grammar check has a place in word processing. But I think it has to be staged correctly, introduced at the proper time. So probably 16, 17, 18. So sophomore, junior, senior year. And it needs to be designed for education. So it's not just giving you answers. It's not suggesting right answers for you. And it's not just giving you whatever the internet said was right. It's helping you process, and then it's being party to that. And I think Khan Academy would be a good example. Here's a math problem. Oh, you need help with this math problem? Here's an explanation for this math problem. And maybe it generates the explanation on the spot. But the premise is that it's very topical. It's very scaffolded in its support. And it's always with the goal of you understanding, not just knowing. And I think there's a huge difference between knowing and understanding. That idea between knowledge and wisdom. There's a pretty big separation there. So that's my not so short answer on yes.
That was you blew my mind with that relational AI. I was expecting you to go, the Grok route or the Chat GPT route, but you honestly just blew my mind with that relational AI thing. Yeah. Well, Nathan, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with you. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but if you could tell our audience how to get a hold of you, what you offer, and how they can find you, and how they can possibly get you to come and speak to them live.
Yeah. So Gospel Tech is a podcast available wherever you listen to podcasts, like this one. So we stream podcasts weekly. Gospeltech.net is our main site. So if you go gospeltech.net/speaking, you can enter your info and it'll send me an email and we'll connect generally over a Zoom call. I'll send you a little link that'll get you the chance to schedule a meeting. We'll talk out what are you hoping for, what does that look like, and how can we make it work. I do travel. So again, Minnesota, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin are on the books, and Washington State is the easiest. So if you are in Washington State, that is just gravy. That's the best. My book, Gospel Centered Tech, is available on Amazon or through our website, and it is intended to be what you just heard, but in 10 easy to consume chapters. So you can go pick the one on just healthy tech or on just building hedges. You don't have to read it sequentially, but it's, I think, 110 pages with some resources, an extra 30 pages in the back of resources for assessing your own tech and applying this. What else did you ask? So that's how we speak. That's the resources I have. What you can expect from the workshops, there's two main ones that I do specifically for adults. It's talking about the big three: smartphones, video games, pornography, and then talking about making tech safe at home. So how do we think about tech rightly? I have a third on sexual integrity. I just forgot that I have that one, but that's a recent addition. So how do we think about sexual integrity beyond just, the PE teacher from Mean Girls, like, don't have sex because you will get pregnant and you will die. How do we instead think about, like, God has made us for freedom? How do we walk in the freedom he has won for us in Christ when it comes to sexual integrity? So, I'd love to be a resource and help you do what you want to do well, which is parent healthy youth in a tech world and fight for your kids, not just with them when it comes to tech.
Amen. Amen. Invite Nathan to your church. If you're listening to this and you know people that need what Nathan has, then, definitely look him up. He's an amazing resource. He does wonderful work and he's very charismatic. And, one thing that I appreciate about Nathan is that his story never changes. The story always stays the same because it was given to him by the Lord. And, it's not contrived in any way. It's not made up in any way. It is fully vetted, fully lived out. In fact, I think the Lord gave Nathan about 20 years of real-time, real-life experience to be able to back up his understanding of what 10 steps to freedom would be for what that's worth. So Nathan, thank you very, very much for taking your time to speak to us. And we look forward to keeping in touch with you, seeing you shortly in the future, perhaps the next conference that we go to.
Yeah.
And, we'll see what the Lord has. But, we always talk every time we see each other about doing something together in the future as far as getting you on our radio station. So we thank you so, so much, and we hope you have a blessed day.
Thank you. Loved this conversation. Thanks for having me, Frank.
All right. Goodbye, Nathan.